What if a single choice could steal love from the heavens? Face Story presents The Man Who Stole Heaven. Long ago, in the forests of Java, a man witnessed something no human was ever meant to see. 7 celestial maidens descending from the sky. In the heart of a dense, ancient forest, where sunlight struggled to pierce the canopy, lived a young man named Jaka Tarub. His world was one of moss-covered stones, gnarled roots that looked like sleeping serpents, and the perpetual twilight of the deep woods. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, carried whispers of forgotten times. Jaka was a solitary figure, his days spent hunting with a silent grace. His only companions the rustling leaves and the watchful eyes of unseen creatures. One sweltering afternoon, drawn by an otherworldly light shimmering through the trees, he ventured deeper than ever before. He pushed aside heavy, velvety ferns and followed a path that seemed to form just for him, leading him to a place he'd only heard of in hushed village tales. The celestial waterfall. The clearing was a breathtaking sight. A cascade of crystal-clear water tumbled down a series of dark, glistening rocks into a tranquil, mist-shrouded lake. The air here was different, humming with an energy that made the hairs on his arms stand up. But it wasn't the waterfall that held him captive. It was the 7 figures bathing in the pool. 7 celestial maidens, their laughter echoing like wind chimes, their forms radiant against the deep greens and browns of the forest. They were Nawang Wulan and her 6 sisters, beings of pure light and beauty from the heavenly kingdom of Claymation. Strewn carelessly on the smooth, grey stones by the water's edge were their selending, magical shawls of shimmering fabric that allowed them to fly between the heavens and the earth. A shadow fell over Jaka Tarub's heart. A strange, possessive desire, dark and unfamiliar, coiled within him. He watched Nawang Wulan, the most captivating of the 7. Her movements fluid and graceful, her joy infectious. He wanted that light for himself, to keep it from ever leaving his dim, lonely world. Moving like a predator, silent and unseen, he crept towards the discarded shawls. His hand, calloused from years of survival, trembled as it closed around the softest, most vibrant one Nawang Wulan's. He clutched it to his chest, its fabric cool against his skin, and retreated back into the oppressive gloom of the forest, his heart hammering a guilty rhythm. When the time came for the maidens to return to the heavens, a cry of panic pierced the serene air. Nawang Wulan searched frantically, her sisters joining the desperate hunt, turning over every leaf and stone. But her selending was gone. As the sun began to set, casting long, menacing shadows across the clearing, her sisters had no choice. With tearful goodbyes and promises to seek help from the gods, they donned their shawls and ascended into the twilight sky, leaving Nawang Wulan utterly alone, a beacon of celestial light stranded in the encroaching darkness of the mortal world. Her sobs were the only sound, swallowed by the immense, indifferent forest. It was then that Jaka Tarub emerged from the shadows, his face a mask of feigned concern. He approached her cautiously, offering comfort, his voice a soothing balm in her despair. He offered her shelter in his humble wooden hut, a refuge from the chilling night and the unseen dangers of the wilderness. Lost, heartbroken, and with nowhere else to go, Nawang Wulan accepted. She followed him through the winding, unfamiliar paths, leaving the magic of her world behind for the stark reality of his. In his home, a simple space of carved wood and flickering firelight, Jaka hid the stolen shawl, burying it deep within the hollow of a large wooden rice barn, sealing his secret beneath tons of golden grain. Days bled into weeks, and weeks into months. The forest, once a place of terror for Nawang Wulan, slowly became her home. She learned the rhythms of mortal life. The sorrow in her eyes began to fade, replaced by a quiet acceptance, and then a gentle affection for the kind, quiet man who had saved her. Jaka, in turn, was completely enchanted. Her presence filled his once empty hut with a warmth and light he had never known. Their shared solitude blossomed into love, a fragile flower grown in the dark soil of his deception. They married in a simple ceremony, witnessed only by the ancient trees and the silent moon. Their love was real, passionate, and deep. It wasn't long before their joy multiplied with the birth of a beautiful daughter, whom they named Nawang. For a time, their small world was perfect. Nawang Wulan, however, still possessed a touch of her celestial magic. A single grain of rice, when she cooked it, could magically fill their entire pot, providing more than enough for their family. It was a small miracle, a remnant of her former power. She made Jaka promise one thing. He must never, ever look inside the pot while she was cooking. For years, Jaka honored her wish, content in his happiness. But the seed of curiosity, once planted, began to sprout. What was her secret? How did this magic work? The question gnawed at him, a persistent whisper in the back of his mind. One day, while Nawang Wulan was away at the river, washing clothes, the temptation became too much to bear. His promise forgotten, he lifted the lid of the cooking pot. He expected to see a bubbling cauldron, a swirl of steam and enchantment. Instead, he saw only a single solitary grain of rice resting at the bottom. Confusion turned to disappointment, then to a foolish, misplaced anger. He didn't understand. Slamming the lid back down, he broke his promise and with it, the spell. When Nawang Wulan returned, she knew instantly. The magic was gone. From that day on, she had to toil like any other mortal woman, pounding and milling rice each day to feed her family. The rice in their barn, the very one that concealed Jaka's dark secret, began to dwindle at an alarming rate. The bottom of the rice barn grew closer and closer with each passing day. The mountain of grain that had once seemed endless was now just a shallow layer. One morning, as Nawang Wulan reached deep inside for the last of the rice, her fingers brushed against something soft and familiar. She pulled it out. The world around her seemed to freeze. In her hands was her selending, its celestial sheen undimmed by its years in the dark. The memories came flooding back, the waterfall, her sisters, the sky, the panic, the despair. And then, the terrible, soul-crushing realization. Jaka, the kind man who had rescued her, the husband she loved, the father of her child, he was the one who had trapped her here. The love in her heart curdled into a profound, aching betrayal. The confrontation was heavy with unspoken grief. Holding the shawl, her tears fell like rain. Jaka, his face pale and etched with guilt, could not meet her gaze. He confessed everything: his loneliness, his overwhelming desire, his terrible, selfish act. He begged for forgiveness, pleading his love for her and their daughter. But the chasm that had opened between them was too wide to cross. The trust that had been the foundation of their life together was shattered beyond repair. Nawang Wulan's home was not here. It had never been. Her place was in Kayangan. With a heavy heart, she dressed in her celestial shawl. The magic surged through her. A forgotten power reawakened. She held her crying daughter, Nawangsi, one last time, her own tears mingling with the child's. She promised Jaka she would return to visit their daughter, but she could never again live as his wife. Her bond to the mortal world was severed. Jaka Tarub could only watch in helpless agony as the woman he loved, the light of his life, ascended into the sky. She rose higher and higher, a shimmering speck against the vast indifferent blue, until she vanished completely, returning to the world of gods and leaving him alone once more in the twilight of the forest, his world darker and emptier than it had ever been before. Jaka Tarub returned to the quiet life he once knew. But the forest never felt the same again, because some love stories are not meant to stay on Earth. Face Story. Every legend has a story. Like and subscribe for next story.